Here we go. Hi, all of you I Can Do Anything podcast listeners. We have a treat today with Xochitl Rodriguez. She and I have been friends for, I'm going to say 3 years, 4 years, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I was thinking 4, but
Xochitl is currently the president of Real Life Trading and has quite a bit of creativity in her. She has also been a business owner, an author, and just an all-around fantastic person.
thank you.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. I think very highly of you, and I think very highly of your experience that you've had over all of these years and your willingness to share your experiences, your successes, and then what I call failing forward.
Mm.
Let's start back in the early days with your business because your businesses were incredibly successful.
Yes, the very first business we launched, I was not a business pager. I never thought I would wind up in business. I was actually in human resources and left because where I was, somebody would need to die or retire in order for me to move, and I didn't want anybody to die and nobody wanted to retire. So I left corporate America for a few reasons and went into teaching. It was from there that I had the opportunity to open up a business. And so I left teaching for the business, but I really enjoyed it. I taught kindergarten. And the very first business, we were extremely blessed. It just took off. We worked hard, but I think God was definitely there to just really enhance what we were doing. And we did great. And from there, my brother and I opened up, my sister-in-law opened up another business. And that was also we were able to break even pretty quickly. We had projected out about 6 months before we would start to break even, and we were breaking even within the 2 months later. So that was great. And then
what did you attribute your success to?
There is a lot of hard work. There's a willing to take risks. Because had we not taken any risks, we never would have known. And then the willingness to walk into a mess and be willing to do the work to clean it up, to turn businesses around, to make them successful. Because I also had the privilege of being offered some businesses they were in the gutter. They were the worst performing stores. People were doing personal laundry. It was a mess. People were stealing left and right. And my brother and I were able to walk into these businesses and identify the problems and just be able to put in the work, put in the hours until we were able to hire people with integrity and train them and then let them run the businesses. But yeah, I think the willingness to fight, the willingness to struggle, the willingness to do what it takes.
At any point were you or your brother ready to throw in the towel?
Oh yeah, many times.
And what the success of this podcast is, what did you do or what was your mindset in order to continue to move past, I just want to quit, I'm done, this is too much work? How did you move past that thought?
So obviously speaking for myself, I don't know exactly what was going on through my brother's mind, but for me, it was looking at the bigger picture. So that always kept me moving forward because the problems that would come up in front of me, it's okay, is this worth me giving up? Is this worth me throwing in the towel? And at the moment, it seemed like, yes, I do not want to be sued. I do not want to do this. I do not want that to happen. And so throwing in the towel, it just kind of seems like the first option. I was oh, this would be the easiest thing to do is let me just throw in the towel and get out of this mess. But maybe I've just watched Rocky too many times where it's you got to keep getting up. You got to keep getting up. So just then I would think about the bigger picture. Okay, is this going to be worth it in the long run? Is this problem or this inconvenience going to be worth me walking away from it? Am I going to be okay with myself in 5 years if I throw in the towel now? So that the bigger picture, I think, is what helps me to keep getting up keep getting up, keep moving forward.
That's awesome. You had originally said, and then things changed right before I asked you a question. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, we plan things out, right? For me, I plan things out and they should go a certain way. And then there's a curveball that gets thrown in out of nowhere and it just changes life. And I've experienced that quite a few times where I didn't just lose a business. Like I just about lost my not my physical life, but my life as I knew it. It was like taken, stolen. And when those things happen, it could immediately put me into like a really dark place of like a bit of victimization was my thought before, of like, why is this happening to me? And I was asking all the wrong questions because I would ask, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Why, why? But it was more focused around as if I had the ability to have changed any of what happened. And I started to realize like, okay, there's nothing I could have done differently. If someone was going to steal from me, was there anything that could have shown me that maybe there was indications? With my ex-husband, this was many, many, many years ago, but yeah, there were a lot of indication he was going to take me to the cleaners, and he did, but then there were other situations that happened to me that I kept asking, why is this happening to me? Why didn't they tell me? Why did this? Why did that? And instead I've been learning that, okay, instead of asking those type of questions, I really need to be, again, focusing on my bigger picture and saying, what can I do to resolve this? What are the potential outcomes that can make this, we'll call it a bump in the road, but at the time it seems like a huge mountain in front of me, a huge wall that I'm never going to get past. But if I could get myself to see beyond that and start thinking, okay, what could come of this? What could I possibly do? Then it changes my mindset. It changes my attitude, my perspective. Well, yeah, things have happened where I'm like, what time does the train run through? And can I jump and not survive? Because with my luck, I would have survived. And then I'd be worse off because then I'd be alive and crippled and, brain damage or God knows what, and maybe that was a good fear I had, that is like, I would probably survive it for as bad luck as I have. It's like, I wouldn't be out. I was like, I would have to deal with life anyway.
What turned the tides for you? What turned it around? Besides thinking of your bigger why, and because I have the worst luck ever, I would survive. When did things start to turn around for you? Because it wasn't right away. It took a while, is my understanding.
And it does seem to take a long time, especially when we're living day to day. Like right now, I could say, oh, it took me 5 years to finally divorce. But back then it was a really long time of torture, of darkness. What turned it around is just, for me, it seemed like it just keep moving. So long as I kept moving, then there's a possibility that something can happen. And those possibilities, like, we never know what those possibilities are. The reason why I mentioned that, even though it was so long ago, is that took me from living very comfortably with a couple of businesses, very successful businesses. It took me from a very nice, comfortable lifestyle into sharing a bed with my mom in my brother's house. And it just felt like, okay, I'm in my 30s. This is not how my life was supposed to be. Right. And so it's also like being tired of being in the same situation. And I didn't know how to pray. It was like it was like I didn't feel I had. I knew there was a God, but it was like, where is he? Why is this happening to me? Again, asking all the wrong questions. But it was just something inside that just said, okay, keep moving forward, and just doing it day in and day out, and then receiving a phone call of, hey, can you do this? Just a different opportunity, and snapping me out of it. And it's like, yeah, I could do that. And then taking that opportunity that then turned in to another opportunity that then opened up another opportunity. And so continuing to I wasn't actively looking for opportunities the way I am now, because now when things happen to me, I do try to like focus more on the windshield versus the rearview mirror. So I've been learning that is like, I didn't realize how much time I spend looking in the rearview mirror.
I think a lot of us, when we get some experience behind us in life, I'm 53, and I think, wow, I feel like the past 3 to 5 years, I finally turned around in my seat and I'm looking out the front window instead of the rear view window or the rear window. But I do feel that until we have that experience underneath us and the good and the bad, we don't realize that it's the front window that we should be looking out. And going back to even our 20s, 30s, 40s, what would our life look like had we known to look out the front window? Yeah, you're going to look out the back window every now and again. Self reflection. Where have I come from? Am I still moving forward? Am I still moving in the right direction? But wow, that is a great analogy, Sochi.
Yes, it is. It's brighten up life. And the reason why I've chosen to be very transparent about all my mess ups, all my my stumbling, is because I don't want other people to do what I did. Like I don't want anyone to live a zombie life for 7 years. If I could help shorten that to a much less time, then yeah, use me as an example, talk about how dumb I was, talk about whatever. It doesn't bother me if I know that someone else can benefit from it. Because as I am getting, I'm 51, yeah, I'm 51, I'll be 52 this year. But as I'm getting older, it's like, before 50 was so old. Now it's like, ooh, it's like I'm about halfway done with my life, So it's like, I think for me, it's like I've learned to like take a much better appreciation for time and where I spend my time. So for the people that are younger, I don't want them to lose the time that I lost. I don't want them stuck in a relationship that isn't going anywhere. And they're just in it because that's been the norm. And it's like, hey, let's reduce my 14 years and reduce that to 2 years for you. And then you've got another 12 years. You're not going to feel like you wasted as much time as I might feel like I had. And I'm grateful for those experiences because like you said, we learn from them. We're able to share them because I could talk to a lot of people about their businesses and teach them how to protect themselves, how to live more balanced, what to look for, how to establish when it comes time to selling a business. I've learned so much in that department too. So it's like taking that so that I don't like feel sorry for myself, but instead it's like, okay, I have this under my belt. Would this information be useful to you? Would this information be useful to you? And I'd rather just share it and not think about, oh, what are people going to say? For those that might have had family businesses for generations, they're going to have a very different understanding of business than someone who's just trying to figure it out as they go. So everybody has a different set of experiences. So if they were to teach me what they've learned, it would benefit me. And if I could teach what I've learned, it'll benefit others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Take us through how you met real life trading, Jeremy Newsome,
Mhm.
and how you became president of real life trading.
I love this story. I love this story because, we just never know how things are going to land later. But I had actually paid over $20,000. I have all receipts, paid over $20,000 for a trading education program, and I was not profitable. And I kept thinking, okay, what's wrong with me? Why asking all the wrong questions? What's wrong with me? Why am I not getting this? It's like, it can't be, it's like, I've studied this. It's like, what is going on? So I was online looking and trying to figure out, why can I not be profitable? And that's how I came across Jeremy. And at first I was like, is this guy for real? It's like, what is his catch? And so I was watching more videos and more, and I was becoming a little obsessed with trading, because usually when I do something, I'm like fully in it. And so I'm watching all these videos. And then finally, it's like I come across a video where he's got a trading room, and he was offering mentorships. And they were one-on-one at that time. And I was like, wow, it's like, okay, well, let me sign up for this. And so I just signed up for his room, and I got to learn about the risk system and what RLT stands for, and who he's developed, who he is, and the type of company he's developed around his integrity and his personality. And so I'm like, okay, I'm in. And then I did a coaching session with him. And this was back when I was still receiving income from the businesses I had sold. Then all of that stopped. The people stopped paying me. My world went upside down. I went through all my savings to keep the house. I went through credit cards. I was in a bad mess. I was down to, I had my car that I drive, and then I had a classic car. And the classic car was worth money to those that like those kind of cars. And I used to have 4, and I kept selling them one by one because I needed the money. And this one car I just kept holding on to. And I got to the point where I was like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I was able to gather some money to go to a retreat that Jeremy was having, an in-person retreat in Nashville. And at that event, he offered a 1-year mentorship. And it was about the cost of what the car was worth at the time.
What year was this, Xochitl?
It was, what year was the car, or the year this happened?
The year that it happened, the year that you...
I think it was, was it 2019?
I was going to say it
COVID
had to have
happened in
been
21. COVID
What's
happened in
that?
19. COVID happened in 19. It's
20.
been 3 years. Okay, so in 2019. So this happened in 2019, September of 2019. And so I did talk to Jeremy, and I told him, I was like, hey, can you save me a spot for your mentorship? Because I don't have the money, but I have a car that I will sell and pay you as soon as the car sells. But, will you wait for me? Can you hold the spot? Because I really...
And by this time you had gone through, like you said, all of your savings, you had racked up credit cards. I'm guessing you were down to the bare minimum.
Yes, like this was the one thing that I have been holding on to that I knew would be worth some money. And I really liked it. It's like, I didn't want to get rid of the car. And then, I also knew, like, I can't, I'm not getting this. It is, and then I had the pressure of like, where am I going to get my next dollar from? I had been a business owner, and I didn't think it'd be reasonable. It would be very difficult for me to find a job, because I would think that most people hiring are not going to want someone with a lot of experience for fear that that person's going to take their job. And I wasn't looking to take anybody's job. I just wanted stability. I wanted to know that where my next dollar is going to come from, because trading with a gun to my head was not a good idea. And so Jeremy said, I think he saw how desperate I was. And he's like, let's start, get your car listed, get it sold, and let's start on your mentorship. And I was like, wow, it's like he's going to start working with me without me paying for it in full. But he had already met me for a while. He already knew me. So I think he also knew, like, I was going to keep my word. I wasn't going to, not pay him. But I sell the car. No, we started the mentorship because the car hadn't sold at that time. We started the mentorship, and Jeremy came out to my house, and he spent a week, and he's teaching me, and he's like, it's not your trading. Like, it's not your trading. It's a pressure you're putting on yourself to trade. It's so he starts talking to me about other ways of creating income, using my business experience to actively do consulting, not just as favors or for people I knew to help them out, but actually as a business. And that's how things started to happen. And during the time that he was with me, I remember him asking me, we went to a restaurant, and he was like, okay, so what would you do with this restaurant if you were consulting with them? And I just started shooting out ideas of what I would do based upon where that location was. And then I said, like 2 years later, he asked me, then this was a time where he was going to be stepping away and taking paternity leave because his son was on the way. And he asked me if I would run the company for him. And I was blown away. It was like, absolutely, I will. It's like, I would love this opportunity, and to be a part of the internal team for Real Life Trading is such a privilege. Getting to be around him, getting to be around Matt, getting to be around our members. It is just such a beautiful community, and it really is a privilege. And they've given me the ability to treat the business as if it was mine. So it's fun for me because I get to see things. I get to stir things in a certain direction. I get to listen to people. I get to be able to create opportunities for them. I get to say no when I'm like seeing a rain track about to happen. So it is, because unfortunately, it's just part of business. Sometimes we make decisions as like, oh, that was the worst thing I could have done. How am I going to make up for this? And that willingness to keep getting up. But also being able to like have those tough conversations with people where they're like, well, I want this, or it's like, well, yeah, but it's not going to happen until we can clear this out, because I don't like to say no forever, but I like to let people know this is why I don't want this. And when we can come up with the reason why we could, potentially resolve a potential problem, then it's like, okay, let's go for it. So sometimes I think my past has also allowed me to be able to have very difficult conversations, because sometimes we don't want to have those conversations. And I think Jeremy knew that I'd be able to have the tough conversations and be able to say yes and no, and be fair and look out for what's in the best interest of the business, not my best interest, not this person's best, but the business, the members, the entire movement of Real Life Trading. Yeah, so that's how we met.
And you've been a member for several years, so you knew what it was like as a member, and then moving through the years to be able to be president.
Yes, and I also had the opportunity of calling people to check in on them. So I was not like an employee of the company, or I was not an independent contractor. I was just like, Jeremy, what can I do to help? What can I do? And it was reaching out to people and just having random conversations and finding out where they're at and what talking over stop losses, talking over entry types, just different conversations that were so much fun. And I remember people thinking is like, well, I don't want to buy anything. It's like, I'm not calling to sell. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not calling to sell you anything, because I wouldn't take that job. Even to this day, like, no, I'm not the best salesperson. But it was just a lot of fun to be able to connect. So I got to see the heart of Real Life Trading. And I already had seen it as a member, because I could feel it as a member, how much Jeremy cares about everybody and genuinely cares about everybody. And then doing it as a volunteer, as wanting to assist, and then moving to the opportunity from that to being president of the company.
As I've mentioned before, you are very creative. As the president of Real Life Trading, you also provide coaching mentorship to any of the members. Can you tell the listeners what type of coaching you do provide?
I like to work with beginner traders. And if they're interested in finding other streams of income for themselves, I love those conversations. And we have a lot of great and fantastic and phenomenal traders. And when it comes to more advanced things, or it's like, I'd rather they go to somebody else, because although I could do it, and I've done groups, I've done mentoring groups, and I've enjoyed it. It's like, I love to see people open up businesses, and not necessarily brick and mortar businesses, but just showing them how their skills or their passion can turn into an additional stream of income, or how they could rearrange their time to be able to do something else. Even with young kids that are like passionate about a sport, is like, hey, have you ever thought about, teaching other kids, or, which would help the older student, but would also help the little ones, because then the parents can like read their books or do whatever they're going to do while their children are are in the same area and they're learning the skill themselves. So I love being able to have those type of conversations and bringing that to our members and bringing that to the business also, and seeing where do we have other opportunities. That's part of what I love doing, is just having, someone called me for a member that was looking to purchase a business. And as we're talking and I'm getting to listen to his why, I'm like, well, how about you just buy the building and start your business there instead of doing what and he's like, I didn't think about that. And it makes sense. And it was, it's like those types of conversations just warm my heart, because we might come in with a certain idea, but if there's other opportunities, let's look at those.
I love that idea. I also love the idea that you're talking about another income stream and your passion, because that's going to lead us right into your book. You are a published author.
Yes.
And while I was probably one of the first round of editors,
Be first.
the first, I would love to hear how you came up with the idea of, how did you even want to write a book? And then how you went about it. And now you're a published author.
Yes. So the very first book that I wrote is actually about my divorce, and that's not been published yet. So let me say it is inspired by my divorce, because I do not need to get sued. So it's inspired, which is why it's not released, because it does need to be rewritten to make sure I don't get sued. But then Jeremy presented me with an idea that he had for a children's book. And I looked at it and I was like, And I liked the idea, and it's like, well, Jeremy, what if we do this? And then we started writing a book to teach children how to trade, introduce them to the stock market. And we are teaching them how to trade, and they get to practice on paper where their entries are, where their stops are, where their targets are. And that's how that book came to be. And now we've already completed the draft for our second book, which is going to show more depth into the trading market and take these children from the first book into the next level of trading. So that's how that book came to be. And that is a series that we plan on writing, and taking children through the different levels of trading and incorporating stories, because we do want to teach children, for those that might not already be in tune with it, what it is to give, what it is to invite other children into their groups, what it is to play sports, how to communicate with each other so that they're not bullying each other, but that they're actually able to empower each other and take each other's strengths and play and have fun, and just teach some of these other concepts in addition to trading, because as real life traders, it is also our heart to give, where we are making money not only for ourselves and our families, but for our communities and for other countries. So we want that mindset to be in children from the time they're young, so that they're already thinking more than beyond themselves and into others. That's how that book came to be. And then with my Proverbs 31 Woman book, that book came during COVID. And I had been in a relationship that didn't seem to really go anywhere for 12 years of a relationship, and then 2 years of an engagement. And I was like, okay, yeah, this isn't going to go anywhere. He's never going to marry me. He doesn't really want to. And I was just getting at the point where I was like, why am I feeling like I'm on a back burner now? And I came across an article which led me to a book that's called The Diamond in the Household of Faith by Dr. David Weider. And when I read it, he referenced Proverbs 31. And I was never a religious person. I always searched for God. I always wanted God. I knew there was a God, but I always wondered, why was he always putting me in these messes? I would take no responsibility for my actions when it came to that. It was like, why is God letting this happen to me? So anyways, I read this Proverbs 31 for the very first time, and I just started crying. I was like, my goodness, this Proverbs talks about this woman who is a phenomenal person, cares about her husband, loves her husband dearly, loves her children, is active in the community, is a businesswoman, is out giving. And I was just like, wow, it's like, this is all one. Was she for real? It's like, how do I be like her? It's like, how do I sign up for this? And then I started to just read articles and started to Google Proverbs 31 woman. And I started to find a lot of negative talk saying like, oh, do not try to compare yourself to her. You're never going to measure up. And in my heart, I'm like, no, this is how God designed us to be. This is what a woman is. A woman is not limited to, if I have a good relationship, then my finances are a mess. If I have my finances a mess, then my relationships are in order. There's no if and then. There's no limit to like, okay, well, if you're doing this, then everything else is going to fall apart. That Proverbs opened my eyes to see the possibilities of a woman. And the word submission had also came up. And in my culture, submissive is like a bad word. Like that, the level of submission that I had seen in my culture, and obviously back more generations, but the word submission was a bad word. It was like, I would never want to submit to a man under the definitions that I had seen. But the definition of submission in the Proverbs 31, I'm like, it's a submission of the heart. It's a submission of trust. It's just a submission of, I give you and you give me, and we complete our purpose together. And I was just so in love with this. And I'm like, my goodness, like God, and I'm crying because now I feel so guilty for all the bad things I said about religion and God, and how could he do this to me? And I'm just crying because I had this realization, like he loves me, and he didn't create me to be in those messes. I put myself in those messes. And when I think about all the signs he sent me, it's amazing he still loves me with all the disobedience I had. And so I just started to get upset by what I was reading, that this discouragement, like, don't try to be like her. And in my heart is like, no. We need to strive to be the full woman we were created to be, and learn how to break down these barriers of, I can't do this, or I can't do that, or, how can I have somebody come into my house and clean my house when there are people starving? How can I do this? How can I really be a successful businesswoman when I've never owned a business? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? Can I really trust my husband? What about my children? And what about this? And what about women like me who've never had children? Okay, well, am I not a full woman because I never had the children? Am I going to die alone? It's just like all these thoughts that try to creep up. That I went on this mission to really begin to learn, to discover, okay, how can I be that woman? And how can others learn to be that woman, where we're not limited by what we've seen, what we've experienced? But if we could take this Proverbs as a blueprint of the level of success that God wants each woman to have. And in this case, it's a woman, but people, the level of love that he has and the level of opportunities that he creates for us, if we move on it, if we trust, if we believe, if we take action. And that's how that book came to be.
When I was reading through it, it was an absolute labor of love. I followed you through the journey. I followed all of your Facebook messages about next steps, when it was coming out, the release. You could tell that was your passion.
Yeah, and a passion I didn't even know I had. I didn't know I had it. I never read it. I'm like, my goodness, I'm halfway done through my life and I never read this until now. Everyone's freaking out. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's what happens. We find things along the way, and it's our responsibility to open the door.
Well,
and
Yeah.
walk through. So
Yes.
something else that really inspires me about you is that you're always learning. And I think you and I have connected on that several times, is that I too am always learning, open minded, watching for those doors to open, opening them ourselves. Uh, we don't wait for things to happen to us. Sometimes it does happen to us, but then we're also always learning, open minded. And that's something that you and I have connected on to. And I find that a very wonderful quality about you.
Thank you. Yeah, when you said open the door, I had this image of, we do is like we open the door and it's like, hey, everybody, there's this door right here. Do you want to look see what's inside? And we want to share it with people and say, like, look what's on the other side of this door. Let's go, and somebody else opens another door and it's like, okay, let's see what's behind that door. And it's fun. And I also admire that about you and what you do with your podcast and who you are and your willingness to assist and, okay, let's create this. Let's see what we can do together.
Yeah. You and I are big on how can I make a difference? How
Yes.
can I help? What can I do to help?
Yes. And that's so much fun. It is
Yeah.
so much fun to be able to create that. Cause then you and I get to meet and have conversations. Okay, what can we do? How can we do it? Who are we targeting? What could it possibly look like? How can we package it? I love having these conversations.
Yes, I do too. What else would you like our listeners to know for business, for moving forward, for dealing with setbacks? Any of the above?
Ask the right questions. Ask better questions than what you're asking.
And how do people do that?
I think by focusing on the bigger picture, focusing on what you want in your heart, without focusing on like, oh, I can never get there. Like, okay, let's put that to the side for a minute. But what is it going to look like when you arrive? What is it? And it's okay if it doesn't happen the way you initially thought, because there might be other wonderful opportunities that come in for that, and be able to discern. Discernment is also a skill that I don't think we get taught very well. At least I don't think I've been taught discernment as well as I wish, because if we do learn to discern things, it'll avoid some of the pitfalls that we put ourselves into, and learning that difference between, is this the right path for me, or is this a distraction? And so when we have our purpose, when we have our vision of what we want it to be, then we can, okay, is this going to bring me closer? Is this going to deter me? And so I actually have read books on how to ask questions.
I'm not surprised. Continual learning.
Yeah, because it's like, how do I know? Because Jeremy would tell me that, like, ask different questions. And he's like, everything's in your questions. Your growth is in your questions. It's like, well, what are my questions? And I think being aware that we could be asking better questions, I think already gives us a step forward.
I do too. It was one of my favorite things that Jeremy had put out there on social media at one point in time, was ask better questions. Asking better questions will give you better answers. And when you're thinking about that and you're trying to ask better questions, why I asked you, how do you do that, is because people are so used to asking the same question, such as I was the same way before really met Jeremy and started this whole growth path that I am forever grateful for. How do I ask better questions? And the thought was, okay, what question I developed for myself? What question would you ask? All right, I would ask this question. Okay, now find 3 other ways to ask that same question differently. And that's how I moved past asking the same old questions, because I do feel, unless you take the time to stop and think about, how could I ask this question differently? How could I get my message across differently? And now I have to come up with 3 different ways to ask this question, was the only way that I started asking questions differently. I do think for everyone who has been in this pattern for so long in their life and what they've known, their experience, they're not going to know a different way to ask the question. And that's how I started. I loved your answer.
Yeah. And I think too, it's, when now with Google and Chat GPT, it's like, we can get ideas by us entering, how to start a conversation with the business person, watching podcasts and seeing the kind of questions you ask, those also spark ideas. And then writing, and I'm a nerd sometimes, like I'll have notes on my phone where it's like, oh, that's a good question. And then I'll write it down under my questions, just because they're not innate yet. It's like I have to like consciously think about them before they become natural. And so when I'm in line in different places, it's like I'm finding more comfort in starting conversations. Whereas before is like, zip it.
And I find that hard to believe.
Yeah, I'm an introvert by nature.
Okay.
Yeah, so to start talking to strangers has been a learned behavior. And
You
it's
do
fun.
you do a fantastic job.
Thank you. That's one of the skills I had to learn when I had my businesses to promote them, because both of them were businesses that were very innovative. And so I had to like go out to like mixers and different things. And I'd be so exhausted by the time I was done, because it was take all this energy to like go out there and try to be social, because it's not normal for me. It's not calm. It's not just depleting. And I had to learn that it's like, okay, I just set time aside after meetings to just be alone and just gather myself before going back out and doing it again. But it's like we can do anything.
We can do anything. Xochitl, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It has been absolutely amazing talking to you, and I can't wait to see where our future goes.
Me too. Thank you so much, Robin. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. And to all of our listeners, stay awesome and keep reaching for your anything.